How did you come to be with such an important piece of history, the All-Star Game, but tying in with America, the Great Depression, and really how important that very first game was? How did that idea come to be?
Well, it came from, feeling sort of depressed about the state of the country, actually, and all the, the polarization and the animosity between people. And I thought, well, we've lived through worse things than this as a country. And I started thinking about the Civil War, and I thought in the Great Depression, it wasn't, not even a century ago. And I started reading about the Great Depression and realized that kind of the inflection point where it started to finally come back up out of this long, deep dive was in the late spring and summer of 1933. So what happened then? Aside from some policies of Roosevelt's, it was the two things that I saw were the Chicago World's Fair and this baseball game that was played as an exhibition, supposedly, as part of the World's Fair. And I realized that, those must have been significant events because, it was right when the country was beginning to believe in itself a little bit. And so when I looked at it in that context and realized, baseball was struggling just as badly as the country. I mean, there were fewer than half as many people in the stands, and most of the tickets being sold were for the cheap seats. Nearly every club was, underwater financially, and quite a number were, teetering on the brink of collapse. So this game was a way for them to sort of bring attention back to baseball, but it also served as sort of a rallying point for the country. When it happened, I think the country really felt good about seeing, how great everything is when people and everything just comes together and works together.
I kind of wonder if when you started this project, did you even imagine that you would include the president who was, shot at, the mayor who was killed, Bonnie and Clyde, and all this whole USA, what it's like. Oh, and there's a baseball game. I mean, did you even imagine there'd be so many tentacles out there?
No, I didn't. I mean, I started, researching the baseball game, but I realized that, it happened because, Chicago got a new mayor who wanted to put his imprint on the World's Fair. And how did it get the new mayor? Well, it got the new mayor because some, madman in Miami decided to kill the new president-elect, got off 6 shots. None of them hit Roosevelt, but one of them did kill the then mayor of Chicago, Anton Cermak, which led to the... And at the time, basically all of the reporters in Chicago were waiting for Cermak to come back because there was this trial going on of Frank Nitti, who had taken over for Al Capone, running the mob in Chicago. And there'd been testimony at the trial that these police officers had been ordered to assassinate Nitti by Cermak. So they were really anxious to talk to the mayor, but he disappointed them by getting shot and dying in a hospital in Miami. So the new mayor, he wanted to put his imprint on the World's Fair. Like I said, thought, let's have an athletic contest. He was thinking horse race or boxing match, but he went to the publisher of the Chicago Tribune, who said, well, let me bring in my sports editor. I mean, he's one of the greatest promoters in the country. And so they brought in Arch Ward, the sports editor, and he immediately said, no, it should be a baseball game between the best players in the American League against the best players in the National League. And from there, it took off.
Was there anything in all this research, let me just tell our viewers, if you're interested in history and sports, boy, this is the book, the first All-Star Game, and it includes so much more history. Is there something that maybe really, really surprised you in all this research you did?
Well, there was quite a bit. I mean, one thing, that would be, have been the most obvious and was the enormity of Babe Ruth. I mean, we all know Babe Ruth as this great legend and, greatest, all of that. But when I actually, sort of studied him in his time, I realized that there's never been anybody in the history of sports even close to Babe Ruth in his sheer enormity, his public profile and his greatness as a player also. So I'd have to say that first. But, I think the thing that really struck me that I also knew but didn't really get was these players were much closer to the fans than they are now. They were much more they saw them much more as peers, as other, because these guys had been working as, you know, pipe fitters and boiler makers and, various blue collar jobs, and they got out of those through baseball. Baseball was their way to, make, and even then, they were making, twice what the average guy made. They weren't making, 10,000 times more. And we consider how, there's never been a drawing card like Babe Ruth, and yet, people thought it was a big deal when he was paid $80,000 a year, which was $10,000 more than the president of the United States. But considering the enormity of his impact as an attraction, never anything close to it. One thing that stunned me was, Babe Ruth was out for most of the 1925 season, or much of it, because of illness. The bellyache heard around the world, it was called at the time. But attendance in American League games dropped by 34% without him in the game. Now, people have said, well, Michael Jordan was, a huge phenomenon. That's true, but if Michael Jordan had been out ill, I don't think NBA attendance would have dropped by 3.4%. So, so 34% because of this one guy.
I wonder if those, like the sports writer who came up with the idea there in Chicago, I wonder if they envisioned the All-Star game as it's turned out to be today from what it was then.
There's no indication they did. It was planned as a one-off. They called it the game of the century, which is now a cliche, but nobody had ever heard that phrase then. So, in fact, one of the ways that they sold it to the major league owners is that, well, it's part of this World's Fair, and there won't be another World's Fair next year or 5 years from now. So, it's a one-off. You only have to do this one time. You don't have to worry about more people coming to you for charity games. So, but the success of it impressed people so much that Major League Baseball kind of recognized that, well, maybe we should do this again. And so they did.
Voila, here's what we have now. Do you think sports can still kind of serve as that, that unifying role that it did back then to kind of bring the country together? Or are those days long gone?
Well, I don't know if it'll ever be as pure as it was then. But I still think it can. I still think that, everything gets politicized these days. If a quarterback introduces the president of the United States, that may be very bad for his public profile. But still, there's something about it that we all get. Is there is a sort of purity in the sense that, the best usually wins. There's a justice in sports. The one who deserves to win mostly does. And, that has a deep appeal to people. And I think we wish that everything worked that way, that there was such justice in all respects of life.
I guess if you had unlimited pages to write and you could make this book, this thick, are there any all-star players from that game that you would have included in your book if you could have? Is there some sort of fascinating story with anybody, not Lou Gehrig, not Babe Ruth, somebody that you go, oh man, if I had 5 more pages, I would include this guy?
I'm glad you asked that question. The player that I think deserved to be written about more, and he is in the book. I think there's a fair bit about him during, especially the 1930 season, but it's Mickey Cochrane. He was, a great player, but his bad luck was epic. So many things hit the guy, and he kept coming back. He had a sort of durability. He even came back from a nervous breakdown, and it all piled up and really broke him. But he recovered from that, and so there was a sort of heroic spirit in the guy that really touched me. And as it turned out, I had to cut the book. I had to cut out that and another section I really loved, because I won't name the bookseller, but a very powerful bookseller said, you've got to get this book under a certain amount of pages, or we're not going to promote it. We're not going to put it up front in the store. So when my publisher
Well, more
Yeah.
bad luck for the player then.
Yeah. So anyway, but Mickey Cochran's, all he suffered and endured and came back from. What an epic character.
Well, the book's called The First All-Star Game, Babe Ruth, FDR, America at a Crossroads. And Randall, before I let you go, I want to ask you this question. If you could take one of today's big fans, one of today's big baseball fans, transport that person back to July 6th, 1933, what moment would you want that person to witness and why?
Well, I want them to witness Babe Ruth's at bat and the home run, because the reaction in the stadium, people were just deliriously happy that it was Babe Ruth. And it was something about, people really just wanted to believe that, that there were certain things were constants, and Babe Ruth was the greatest constant in baseball. And to have him, like I said, fat and almost 40, and, a lot of people saying it was past it, come through in that moment, just brought ecstasy to the crowd. And it'd be hard to top that.
Did he call his own shot on that home run?
No, he didn't on that one. But it's a beautiful thing to see. You can there is actually footage of it, film, just actually of that bat and swing. You can find on the internet, and it's a beautiful thing to see because when he connected, it looked so effortless. When he missed, he was a corkscrew. I mean, he had that much into it that he was like spun to his knees. But when he connected, it just looked effortless. He lifted the ball, and what looked like a high pop fly just soared out of the park.
Very good. I guess if we could all transport back to see Babe Ruth, that would be a dream for all baseball fans. Randall, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. The book, The First All-Star Game, check it out. It's a book on baseball. It's a book on history. It's a book on Chicago and just how all this came together. I really appreciate your time. What are you most proud of before I let you go? Well,
that I think that I wrote something that should, I hope, help people feel good about the country they live in. That this is a great country. We've done great things. We will do great things again. And, I wanted to make people feel that.